I come along and I say this because yesterday the Detroit Red Wings played the Vancouver Canucks. And Vancouver's not a good hockey team by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think anybody's going to sit here and tell you that Vancouver is some world beater, and that's just not the case. But the reality of the situation is Vancouver came in here. It was a game that Detroit could have looked ahead. That's my opinion, because if you look who they're playing tomorrow in the Montreal Canadiens, which is a pretty big game for the Atlantic in Montreal on Hockey Night in Canada, it's a big game. And they come out and they steamroll the Canucks 5-1. Patrick Kane gets his 500th goal, 2 goals in that game, just an absolute beating. And a lot of people, they worry about things they can't control, like the standings. We look at the standings and you're like, oh, the Red Wings are, they played more games than the rest of the teams. They've only played one more game than the Montreal Canadiens, which they'll play tomorrow. They played 3 more games in Tampa Bay. But I want you to look at point percentage. Detroit has a .622 point percentage, which would be like 5th in the East. So that's where I stand right there. So there's a lot to be said about this Detroit Red Wings team. And the way they played last night against the Canucks really opened my eyes, in my opinion. Because there's 2 things that come along with beating the Canucks. We know the Canucks are not a good team. They're really not. But when you look at the stretch that's coming up, you couldn't ill afford a stretch where you started with a loss to the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, you're going to be playing the Canadiens tomorrow, the Hurricanes on Sergei Fedorov's retirement jersey night. You're going to be playing the Bruins on a back-to-back in Boston, and then the San Jose Sharks, which everyone looks at the San Jose Sharks and they go, they're a young team. They could beat you. They're a good team. So I look at this Red Wings team, and there's a couple of things I stand by. And I've said this for a while. I looked at November and December as the biggest barometer of whether I believe in this Detroit Red Wings team. And I say that with all certainty because when I look at this Detroit Red Wings team and I go back to my point about the point percentage, this was the winning percentage November and December. And then you look at the point percentage in November and December, it was really just missing. And you went on a firestorm in January and February, you got nowhere. And in March, you fizzled out. I think this year has been more concrete. I think this year has been more something that you're seeing more things that you can believe in. You can believe in this team. And I think John Gibson, the goaltender, has turned a corner from when he came here. It looked like he was a little bit out of sorts. We have a fantastic article by Sportsnet highlighting Sider, and we've talked about Sider here on the podcast. You look at his statistics, overall offensive rating, defensive rating, net rating plus 11.3. You look at some of the things like goals for X goals for, all strengths. You got a good group of people there, and God dang, Shane Godspur would be great to have on the Red Wings right now. But Sider has had a great year. And then you look at some of the players like Lucas Raymond, Patrick Kane, JVR. I think a lot of people underestimated what he was able to do and what he would be able to do coming in for this team. And he's done a damn good job with the Detroit Red Wings. And I've been very, very pleased with the way that JVR has played this year with the Detroit Red Wings, because I did not expect him to be as good as he's been in all certainty. Like, I look at JVR and I'm like, all right, he's all right. But, when they signed him, but now I'm like, this guy has been absolutely fantastic for this team. And it's someone that you could really bank on. And I like the way that he's been playing. But JVR has got, when you look at the goals, he's got 11 goals. Lucas Raymond's got 13. I don't think Lucas Raymond has hit the apex of what he can be either. So I look at a lot of underperforming players. I look at Marco Kasper. Like, I thought Marco Kasper would have way more than 3 goals and 3 assists. He struggled this year, but I think that if he takes a step up, this team could be really cooking with some peanut oil, in my opinion, because you look at some of the players that are performing better than I thought they would. Like Axel Sandin Pellikka. No one thought he was going to be on the roster. I kind of figured he would be on the roster. I didn't think he'd be on the roster to start, but at some point, but he's got 17 points in 45 games, and it's good. It's really good. This team has a lot of talent, and there's a lot of people that have came from nowhere, like Emmett Fenney. No one knew who Emmett Fenney was, except people that they follow the prospect pool. And look no further than down in Grand Rapids. You don't have to go far to see where the trajectory of this team is going to be. You look at Grand Rapids; they're 28-1-1. And one, there's because they count some overtime loss or something like that. But when I look at the Grand Rapids Griffins, this is the statistics that I put on the page, and you might have seen it already. But for the people that are going to be listening to this podcast or the YouTube video, Grand Rapids records 28-1-1. They got 58 points. They just hit 60 points. All four goalies for the Grand Rapids Griffins are under 2 goals against. It's unbelievable. Geilander, 1.57 goals against. Kosa, 1.67. Tokarski, 1.92 goals against. And Michael Postavia, who Steve Yzerman signed from the Czech League, if you remember correctly. He signed from the Czech League, Michael Postavia. They're all under 2 goals against. So that's pretty remarkable for the team in Grand Rapids. And then you go, but what about the offense? Well, before Leonard was set down, he was their best scorer, right? Stein, Dries, Gustafsson, Lombardi, and Mazur are point-per-game players in the AHL. And I think that's something that could really be said about this Detroit Red Wings team is not only are they good at the NHL level, because they are good at the NHL level. They're second in the Atlantic, 56 points right now. And their point percentage is high within the conference. But what you look at is this. Even going down the pike, AHL, there's a lot of good AHL players that are ready to go. And that's where I stand on this team right now. They're playing so good. They're playing so physical. They're doing all the things they need to be done. And it's something that, when the Yzer plan was starting, right? I think all of us said at one point in time, the Yzer plan, it's been a little bit slow. It's been a little bit played out. I think we're starting to see what the Yzer plan is all about. And, for our first couple years, I mean, you see the statistic right here. Last year, this is the record before the first 38 games. But you see that. Like that's a total reversal of what they've been able to accomplish. So my point here is every one of us at one point in time was like, okay, the Red Wings have an issue, and the Yzer plan might be the issue. Now, if you've been following this podcast along, if you've been listening to this podcast at any point, I've pointed out you had the expansion drafts, the 2 expansion drafts that kind of slowed a little bit of progress, especially when you were trying to protect rosters and protect players. That was an issue. But now you're seeing what it could be, what it could really be. And you're seeing it with Sider, and you're seeing it with Raymond. Even Raymond's Raymond looks a little bit hurt, to be honest. But this team yesterday showed me once and for all. I had an idea of what the Red Wings were. I had an idea of what they were going to become. But yesterday was a game where I looked at it and said, this is a hard line in the sand moment for this team. Playing Vancouver's not a good team. But sometimes when you play these teams that are not good, you get backed into a corner. You get shown up a little bit. Sometimes you don't take them seriously and you kind of get thrown, off track. And then you're down 2-0 and you're trying to play pickup hockey. And I thought yesterday was such a good game from the Detroit Red Wings perspective because they actually took it for certain, and they actually took Vancouver as they were an NHL team. And you could say, oh, that doesn't mean much, but it does mean a lot. It means a ton, especially when you're talking about this Detroit Red Wings team and where they're going and how they're going to have to do things in the next couple months. And remember, February is a lost month pretty much. You're not going to be playing hockey in February because of the Olympic break. And I don't know if you've seen the Olympic ice; they had a crater today, so that's not good. But it's so interesting what this team is doing and this critical stretch they got coming. Like I said, Canadians tomorrow, Hurricanes, Bruins, Sharks. They all don't look like world beaters, but these are teams that can beat you. And I thought coming into this stretch, you had to win the Vancouver game. Had to win the Vancouver game. If you can go 2-2 right here, you're in a good spot. So it was a good game by Detroit. And I thought they did a damn good job at just not allowing things to get out of control.